In this lecture, we are going to cover the modifications of stem. So in the previous structure, we studied about the stem, its structure and functions. And in the functions of the stem, we studied that the main function is to bear branches, leaves, fruits and flowers. And the stem also conducts water, minerals and photosynthetes. What are photosynthetes? Photosynthetes are the products which are formed during the photosynthesis. So the stem also performs the function of conducting water, minerals and photosynthetes to different parts of the plant. Now let us look at different kinds of modifications found in the stem. So besides these main functions, some of the stems undergo changes in their shape and structure to carry out different functions apart from these main functions. So these different functions can be for the storage of food, for the support of the plant, for the protection of the plant, to carry out photosynthesis in certain areas as an adaptation, and to carry out vegetative propagation and spread. So let us look at each of these modifications with their important examples. First of all, let's see the modification of stem for the storage of food. So what happens, some of the stems, mainly the underground stems, they undergo modification and they store food inside them and grow in size. So these are the mainly underground stems which carry out the function of storage of foods. So in the storage of food, we will study about 4 types of stems. The first one is called a tuber. An example of tuber is potato. So potato is an underground stem. It has a reserve food material which we eat as starch. Then the other kind of stem is the rhizome. Examples are turmeric and ginger. So if you closely look at turmeric or ginger, you can even see the nodes and internodes like this. And we have studied that nodes and internodes are the characteristic of a stem. So turmeric and ginger is actually a stem. Modification of stem basically for the storage of food. The other modification is called a corm. Example of corm is colocasia or arbi. And another example is zameen kand, which is also called as elephant foot yam. These two are the examples of corm. Then the last example of underground stem modified for storing food is bulb. As the name suggests, the examples are onion and garlic, which look like bulb, but the stem is actually flattened one. So if this is an onion, then if you look at the base of the onion, there's a very flattened structure. This short flattened structure is called the bulb, which is a modification of underground stem, and it contains reserve food material. So these were all the modified stems, underground stems, which reserve food in them and with their important examples. Now let us, before moving on to the next modification, one important thing is that all these underground stems, different types, tubers, rhizomes, corm and bulb, they act as organs of perennation. What does it mean? Organs of perennation means these tubers, rhizomes, corm and bulb, they store food in them. So whenever the conditions are not favorable for the plants to survive, as in the case of winter or drought, then these underground stems, they help the plant to survive in these difficult situations and reproduce vegetatively. So the plant survives with the help of the reserve food material, and when the favorable conditions arrive, the plant starts to germinate again. Now let us move on to the next modification, which is for the support of the plant. For support of the plant, stem tendrils are found. These stem tendrils are formed from the axillary bud. Now we studied about the axillary bud in the previous lecture when we studied about the stems and the characteristics. We studied that stem has two types of buds, axillary bud and terminal bud. So the axillary bud has multiple purpose. It can form into any kind of structure that is required by the plant. So here for the support, the axillary bud forms stem tendrils. Examples are various type of gourds like cucumber, pumpkin, and there was one more example, watermelon. These are the example of gourds which have stem tendrils, and grapevine. So they have stem tendrils for the support. What is a stem tendril? A stem tendril forms from the axillary bud. So suppose this is a stem and this is a leaf and this is an axillary bud. So this axillary bud will form a thin and spirally coiled structure which is called your stem tendril, and this stem tendril helps to climb. It helps the plant to attach to some surface and climb and grow. So it basically helps for the support of the plant. I hope this is clear. Then let us move on to the next modification, which is for protection. For protection, here the axillary bud is developing into a thorn. A thorn which is woody and straight and a pointed structure. An example in which this modification is found is bougainvillea, and citrus plants. So as we studied in the previous case where for the support of the plant the axillary bud turned into a stem tendril, here the axillary bud turned into a thorn. So suppose this is the stem, this is the leaf, and here the axillary bud is situated. This axillary bud will give rise to a pointed thorn. Now how this pointed thorn helps in the protection of the plant? It helps the plant against the browsing animals. So browsing animals are those animals which just keep on grazing over these plants. So when they eat a plant that has this thorns, so they will get some unpleasant feeling and pain in their mouth, so they will stop eating that plant. In this way, these thorns help in the protection of the plant. So these thorns are the modifications of stem. Now let us move on to the next modification, that is photosynthesis. Now when a stem undergoes or carries out photosynthesis, it is a type of adaptation which is found in the plants of the arid region or the dry regions. For example, in deserts where the temperature is very high and the climate is very dry. So the examples for these are Opuntia and Euphorbia. These are the plants which are found in the arid region, and what happens in them is that their stems, they modify. In case of Opuntia, the stem gets flattened like this. So Opuntia is a type of cactus, and we all know how a cactus looks like. It looks somewhat like this. So these flattened structures which we see are actually modified stems. And then these structures have thorns in them. These thorns are nothing but modification of leaves, which we will study further when we will study about leaves. So in Opuntia, these stems get flattened. Why they get flattened? Because the region is dry, the temperature is very high. So in order to conserve water, they get flattened, and they also carry out photosynthesis. Similarly, in case of Euphorbia, another example, in Euphorbia, the stem modifies into a fleshy cylindrical structure which looks somewhat like this. Fleshy cylindrical structure, it will be like this, and they will carry out photosynthesis. So I hope this modification is clear. The examples are Opuntia and Euphorbia. Now let us look at the last modification, which is for the vegetative propagation and spread. So vegetative propagation means when a plant reproduces using its vegetative part. It is not a kind of sexual reproduction. With the help of any part of the plant, we can generate a new plant. That is called vegetative propagation. So when the stem performs vegetative propagation, it is a modification of stem. Now under these we will study different types of stems with their examples. The first one is called a runner. Example where runners are found is grass and strawberry. Now what is a runner? Runner is nothing but the underground stem of these plants. Suppose this is a grass. So they have underground stem which is connected to the plant above the soil. And these underground stems, they keep spreading out to new areas underground. So what happens when an old plant dies? These underground stems give rise to the new plant and helps in their vegetative propagation and spread. So suppose if this plant died here, then this underground stem remains, this underground stem will give rise to a new grass. Examples are grass and strawberry. The next kind is called the stolons. Examples are jasmine and mint. Please remember the examples, they are very important. So, stolons look somewhat like this if this is the soil and if this is the plant. Then what happens is the root. A lateral branch will arise from the main branch. It will grow in size. And after some time, after growing to a certain length, it will fall over the soil. It will touch the soil, and whenever it touches the soil, it will give rise to a new plant. So suppose this side a new plant is formed, similarly this side also. A lateral branch may arise, grow, and after some time it will fall on the ground, and whenever it touches the soil, it will form root and shoot system and give rise to a new plant. So this structure is called a stolon. Examples are jasmine and mint. Next example is the offset, which is found in pistia and Eichhornia. Eichhornia or water hyacinth. Now, what is an offset? An offset is actually a very short stem having short internodes. So, if this is a stem, this stem will have very short internodes like this. These will be nodes. Internodes will be short, and wherever these nodes are present, from these nodes a tuft of roots will arise like this. Tuft of roots will arise, and from these nodes rosette of leaf will also arise like this. Rosette of leaves, a group of leaves. So wherever these roots come out in the soil, they will dig deeper into the soil and form a new plant from there. So these structures with short internodes from where these roots and leaves are arising, tuft of roots and rosette of leaves arises. This structure is called an offset, and it is mainly seen in Eichhornia and pistia. I hope it's clear. Then let us move on to the last modification, which is called sucker. Examples are pineapple, chrysanthemum, and banana. So what is a sucker? Let us see. If this is the main plant and this is the underground stem and then the roots, then what happens? Lateral branches arise from the underground part of the plant. So this is the basal portion of the stem near the soil, and from this basal portion of the stem, new stem lateral branches will arise and they grow obliquely. They grow obliquely, and these branches that are formed obliquely, they will form a new plant. In this way, they help in the spread and vegetative propagation of these plants. So these modifications are called suckers, seen in pineapple, chrysanthemum and banana. So this completes the different kind of modifications seen in the stem. I hope the lecture is clear to you. Please remember all the important examples of each modification. Thank you so much.